Hello and welcome to March. My name is Faye and I'm here to pass on from my beautiful spirit team messages, both intuitive, psychic and channeled, to help support you through the second part of March. We are almost halfway through, so I do apologize for those of you who are hanging out for this at the beginning of the month. I did sit down on a couple of different attempts, and to be quite frank with you, the energy was just so heavy. I felt very teary. It's important for me as a channeler and a reader to really not be attached to the information as it's coming through, because if I do get emotionally sort of involved or invested where I'm kind of leaning in, I end up taking a lot of it on. So we're all kind of working with an element of the divine detachment, as my beautiful friend Luana would say. And that's what I've needed to work on before attempting to sit down and bring this through with clarity for you today. So there has been some clairvoyant pictures and images dropping in. If you are on my Instagram, you would have heard me sort of describe the metaphor of what I could see happening collectively. And it started off as a rumble, if you can almost imagine sort of pressure underneath the feet. When we're looking at a rumble underneath the feet, we're looking at those things that kind of create an element of stability. So we're looking at feet chakras, earth star chakra, first chakra, base chakra. All of those elements, we're looking at tribe, we're looking at those real fundamental pieces, points around finances, we're looking at points around community, tribe, connection to other. And not only that, I kind of really want to emphasize this sense of safety that started to feel a little bit imbalanced when this rumbling started to occur. After the rumbling and this kind of like shaking up of what's needed to come to the surface for you, whether this has been happening for months or whether this is sort of fresh new information that's coming to the surface, it was like quite an uncomfortable experience for a lot of you, that put you in a position where you weren't able to kind of turn a blind eye to some of the things that maybe you had kind of gone, you know what, in time I'll know, you know what, in time I'll get to that, you know what, in time. And it was sort of like, no, there's this real emphasis on needing to shift, not necessarily even forward at the moment, but to shift from the current experience. And this stuff that kind of got rumbled up to the surface, whilst hugely uncomfortable, was very necessary. This kind of started the purge. When we're looking at energetic purge, these can manifest in symptoms that feel very closely and directly connected to some of the categories that come underneath our mental health brackets. So a lot of sensations like anxiety can be moods or sort of quite depressive moods, feeling kind of detached from life, right down to sort of symptoms that are very close to the physical body because it's happening in the etheric, right? And if you're sensitive, you're feeling what's going on in the etheric body through your physical body. So this can actually be nausea, changes in diet because of that, feeling like you need to eat more or eat less. And this kind of like nauseous feeling, the temperature fluctuations and change. This can actually be aches, pains, cramping in the body. For some of you, headaches and things, depending on what has surfaced in your system. This is where we're looking at sort of more of an individual experience. But by now you should see what it is that you are working with. So this purging that kind of takes place, and we are looking from energy, as I said, from the base chakra sort of erupting upward, is that the trembling underneath the ground that initially felt quite unsettling came to like a slight eerie pause. And then we sort of started to see where we were feeling really stuck in this experience. So for some of you with great mastery and awareness and support around you, you may have actually avoided the experience of what came next, which was almost like mud. That's how I'm going to describe it. This feeling of mud and like almost like a landslide starting to occur. So cracks kind of opening up in the ground, and then feeling if there was stuff there that you weren't able to move and shift quite easily, and it felt like a lot. There was actually almost this moment of sort of starting to feel a little bit buried beneath. this is where I felt like I was at the point last week where I tuned in. So we're kind of just catching up, and we will get to the present moment and look into the rest of March. But this kind of attempt to kind of catch up came with a bit of a pressure system, and a different kind of pressure that was pulling everything up to the surface. It started to feel like it started to stretch. And it was reminding me of that period when you're in like a yin class and you kind of hit that point where you're sort of uncomfortable. And if you can coach yourself really gently, you can sort of let go and actually drop in and find your body kind of opens and lengthens a little bit more easily. But if there's resistance there, or the breath is not able to connect to calm, it can sort of feel a little bit panicky all of a sudden. So some of that happened last week, this kind of feeling. So if you can imagine that you're standing in the mud, and if you weren't able to kind of trek lightly across the surface of that to your focused destination, even if that be just to remain in peace in the present moment, right? Or just to kind of trust and allow for that motion to take you where it needed to. And that can be where your connection to source, or God or love or whatever that is for you was really helpful and is really helpful. That kind of faith point, like moving into the unknown, because a lot of it has been veiled. But if you sort of felt the stagnancy, fear got in the way, there's kind of been this momentum, feet buried underneath the sticky mud. And then instead of kind of rumbling, again, it sort of started to feel like it was stretching. And they were actually showing me like stretching the physical body, almost in that split stance where the feet got to the point where it's like two avenues, and it almost felt like, do I take this path or do I take this path? And really kind of seeing both as equal ways through, but not being able to confidently kind of leap to one or the other, because it was almost like if we were to look at it in truth, they were both kind of happening or playing out simultaneously anyway, because there's still a pathway in the middle of the two. And so it's this strange kind of like balancing or trying on different ideas, and this could be because we are looking at the themes around base chakra. This can be sort of financial, this can be community, this can be your tribe, so your close home network. This can be bigger sorts of topics and conversations of like, do I buy a house? Do I not? Do I leave the relationship? Do I stay? Do I invest in this thing or don't I? Right down to sort of like movement. Do I go to this place? Do I live in this place? I kind of, if you can really deeply move into the topics and the areas of your life that create safety for you, that you personally feel connected to, what is it that you need to feel safe? They're the kind of areas or the topics of conversation that have come into the awareness where there is a bit of a split, where there hasn't been that absolute clarity in order to make a decision because it's been so blurry. Instead of feeling like you have to make this decision right now, there's this moment that we've kind of come into in the last 24 hours as we start to kind of look forward, where we're leaning into the necessity of the rising of this energy to clear the palette completely so as that you can see with clarity. But this isn't something that you are going to see if you are looking for an answer for what's going on in your environment, in your community, in your finances, in these other pieces of your life that create a sense of safety. Is that the answer is not going to necessarily arise from the external environment because it isn't yet manifest. So we access this information by going within. It's also one of those experiences the Spirit is trying to kind of explain to me. It feels like we should be able to kind of dive in and get all of the information that we need in order to like make these decisions and take some action in the direction that you want to be going in, or that you're feeling called or pulled in. But it seems to me that when we kind of go in, we are looking at more of an onion experience. So I am going to bring the invitation for permission for endurance for the next couple of weeks, to take your time with this, but to devote and commit to your practice inwardly. This is a beautiful, beautiful time to be developing your own intuition and your relationship to your inner world. Profound insights can happen from this place, as we do have a lot of kind of multidimensional awareness at the moment, access to to a lot of past life surfacing, parallel realities, alternative realities. We're able to place our consciousness in different points in time and collect data that we need if the intention is pure and it is here to help you and your higher self and the highest good of all. So I'm going to encourage you to go in and to also acknowledge that this might be something that you need to do every day for a week until you get to the very core of your onion and you see what it is that you have been intending to see, because you have moved the energy by going through these layers of stagnancy to bring it to life. We will feel more energized to take the action too, because there's only a very small percent that feels like they've escaped this kind of experience. And I'm going to say maybe 5%, 2% of people that feel like they're just kind of soaring above this right now. And it's actually really necessary, and it's beautiful to cheer these people on right now if you do see them in your life, because they're acting as like a point of light for those whom are feeling really stuck. And it's so important that we celebrate other, even if you're feeling in a place that feels kind of dim. And so with this kind of energy, it's like they light the sky, if you can kind of imagine it that way. We are all part of one and the same thing. But this going within is very challenging. I'm going to say that there is so much conversation and so much left or right or black and white. It feels very sort of like this dualistic experience internally. And whilst the clarity will come to you, it's when you start to see, I sort of sense when you see the information that you're guided to go and settle into through your heart with no reaction or attachment to the outcome, you will feel yourself quite naturally shift forward. And that's where I kind of see the legs almost like this feeling of being really stretched, kind of comes back to this center point, and you start to see that this path is not necessarily either the way that you thought it was, left or right. It can look completely different, and it's more of a surrendered experience where you're not necessarily making decisions for ahead of time. You're making them more in the moment. If you work with symbolism and these sorts of things in your everyday life, it's great to ask the universe for these kinds of messages to come through right now. It could be as simple as, I said this to somebody the other day and they're just reminding me the same pieces, like the magpies. You know, every time you see a magpie, let this be a reminder that you're exactly where it is that you need to be. And not just that, can we sink in a little deeper? Perhaps that's your moment of invitation where there's like an opportunity for clarity in that moment as you're on the move. And so for some of you, it's actually about going and booking that appointment with the financial advisor and seeing what kind of information comes from that conversation. For some of you, it's taking time to see how you feel outside of your relationship. For others, it's about looking at where you don't feel connected to your community and whether this is your own blockage or whether this is because you're being called somewhere else entirely. And so when we're looking at these topics around safety, it's almost this approach to the recognizing that in any moment we can feel safe or unsafe. And most of it is dependent on our relationship to our inner world versus our environment. And so I'm not encouraging you obviously go and put yourself in places or situations that are unsafe, but it's to see that the reaction or the response to the universe around you or your outer world or how you're relating to this experience is such a deep reflection of what's going on in here. I had too much coffee already today, so we're on milk. With this energy, I also do sense that for some of you, I feel like you've got to know what this is and how this has surfaced for you. There's a lot of magic in allowing the bridge between, I want to say it's like this invitation for like absolute honesty into like the darker cracks of our own reality, or sort of almost like those things that you would take into a private room and feel like you needed just time to come to terms with, really precious, vulnerable aspects of your own psyche that want your energy and attention, almost just to face them. And this doesn't necessarily mean huge amounts of active shifting in energy. I see this more being like an awareness and actually just looking at it for how it is. And what can happen with that is that it kind of just trickles away. And with that awareness, it offers you the perspective that you need in order to kind of operate and function from your heart moving forward, even if reality is not what you expected it to be, because I do feel like this is such unknown territory. But with that, we want to create safety inside of the body. The animals that I see on the outskirts of this is like a vulture kind of energy. And interestingly enough, I do recall this coming up in somebody's reading in the week, and I thought that it was quite fascinating that these sorts of animals could be interpreted as something that initially you're quite afraid of, but it can sort of feel like there's this, the muck gets cleaned up by external forces once you've looked at it. I don't really see, it's like it gets recycled into something else, and it becomes, almost want to say like when I look at birds, I look at spirit, and I feel the relationship with birds, the way that they interact with life, this kind of freedom, this flow, this allowing nature to take its to live through its cycle and kind of come in and clean up after, or this relationship to like death, birth, rebirth, like death, birth and rebirth, and almost kind of seeing the cycles of life for what they are. And for some of you, that actually may be that you've let go of loved ones. It could be that you've lost friendships, that you're looking at relieving relationships or workplaces or situations that aren't necessarily creating a sense of safety in your body because they are done and finished, but not because they were unnecessary or unpurposeful, more of this sense of it's just the cycle of life. And whilst it feels harsh for me to bring in this invitation for divine detachment of relationships to things, people, places, stuff in your everyday life, how you thought that it could have been, should have been, would be, it actually helps us see with clarity, to allow the forces of nature to come in and kind of clean up after you've had this epiphany or aha moment or this clarity that's edged you potentially to look at endings. It's a really big ending point for a lot of you. It takes time. It comes with elements of grief. Once the emotions kind of soften because you've given yourself permission to feel these, and some of that is having support here too, it's sort of like I want for us as a collective to be done with some of the topics or these pieces that we've been, like some of these threads feel ancient. I sort of feel like I want us to be done with this particular cycle. For some of you, it's been months. For some of you, it's just weeks. But this particular energy is very heavy and has us attaching to aspects of life that doesn't necessarily let the natural flow of the universe come through the system and work a little bit more fluidly. It's like where we sort of feel like we might be interfering with the natural cycles of life. It helps to know which part of the birth, death, rebirth cycle you're in right now. For some of you, it is that like after birth, so you're sort of soaring, and that sort of 2 to 5% that's kind of just flying, and keep doing what you're doing. It's wonderful, and I'm cheering you on. For others, there's this feeling of like absolute endings. And so with this energy of absolute endings and saying goodbye to these aspects of yourself that no longer require you to be and live through fear or through uncertainty or unnecessary worry, it's time to put those aspects to rest so as that this mature version of you can start to come through. this mature voice that I see kind of almost like a vine. It's like ivy, and you might call ivy is one of those interesting things. I'd love to have a look at the medicinal properties of ivy, but as I kind of see this growing up, it's very strong, and with that kind of comes strength in voice. It comes with almost like, I love the green aspect of this. It feels very heart-centered. And this strength that starts to come through, that it really feels like a mature energy, has a louder voice than the ego. It has a louder instruction than the lower mind or the ego voice. It has a louder voice than fear. And it becomes it becomes a soft and more, what's the word, please? Like, the focal point, the majority of your psyche. So even if doubt arises, this strength that comes through after you've looked at this and gained your new perspective now from going within, is that this strength that comes through is what ends up carrying you into what is best for you, but also for humanity. So all of those projects, creations, ideas, friendships based on ego, based on fear, based on sort of unhealthy attachments, whether that be through your own pain or trauma, and all due respect for all of that, but it sort of feels like those are the things that are dripping away because you've been doing the work, and it's time to kind of have this experience where your inner world is reflecting to your outer world. And this is kind of what I want to see. A lot of you have been doing the work internally for such long periods of time for these really big topics that we kind of want to like put to bed now. And when I say put them to bed, it then allows for what it is that you've been intending to surface and manifest and be a part of your life can now come to fruition. So for those of you who have been single for a really long time and have been doing the work around your relationships and romantically, I kind of sense a really beautiful new, it comes with boundaries, it comes with strength, it comes with discernment. You know, it's sort of like I don't feel you getting wrapped up in the same cycles that you previously were because you have this perspective. For those of you who have been struggling financially, I sense you moving through the world with a little bit more gratitude, and this beautiful kind of almost like a more logical perspective, or like an alternative perspective. Like, you may know abundance, but like my friend again Luana said in the week, financial literacy is a whole nother piece. And so it's sort of like you have this, what's needed comes through to help you excel, but it's not this kind of elevation where life just feels like woo, woo, woo. It's more of like a serious tone that is been a long time coming. It's actually been holding you the entire way through and being saying, don't worry, I've got you. It's coming. Let go, detach, surrender, soften. It just becomes the majority. And the majority vibration allows for you to kind of stay on top of the weeds that surface, whether that just be through doubt or worry or resistance to going within it. And you pluck away at these to continue to give power to this kind of like central channel or your internal core that is a heart-based decision. I feel like we went on like a really big trip then. I hope I didn't repeat myself too much. And if you're still listening, that you're still with me. So the timing of this is a really interesting one. As I said, we're in March. I feel like this is a theme that actually extends probably or quite possibly like into May. May kind of feels like brand new doors opening and a very different experience. So it's kind of like a let's not waste time right now. I do feel this really showing up close to home. So as we looked at the base chakra, not just this, but other sort of topics of conversations, I think for a lot of you, there's conversations around family. There's kind of these like interesting, who is a part of your tribe. I see like the wolves connected to this, and you might have messages come through from the wolves. Even interesting behaviors in your own internal psyche that mimic the movements of a pack, or where they're not, and how that's showing up in your life and where you desire that to be. If you've said goodbye to like grandparents or elderly, it's like, can you see how the shift sort of starts to take place, how one person's life within your family changes and how the ripple effect ultimately does have an effect on you because you're connected through blood. For those of you who haven't been spending time with your family, or they're not really a part of your life, I can see that there's contemplation there, perhaps almost like a feeling of grief. And I would invite that process to be attended to slowly and very lovingly, and to not blame this relationship on those externally, but to look at this from a higher perspective and start to look at what were the karmic interactions here. The purpose of your beautiful pod and why you've come to be, why you are in this earth. I say it all the time, there's like 8 billion people on this earth, and that your circle of your bloodline, and then your close friendships and relationships, even your work colleagues and your lovers, and this kind of initial circle, even those people that sell you coffee or the people that are in your supermarket that you see weekly, like, it's really freaking important that we look at all of these relationships. And if you are still blaming other for the way that you feel inside, you're going to be up for a bit of a rude shock, because we want to have a look very honestly and very truthfully at what's your part to play in the story. And if the story is done for you, it actually has no effect internally in your body or your being anymore. And so I do kind of sense that we have a lot of karmic kind of chapters closing up here. There's a lot of movement. So when we're looking at this landslide kind of piece, I can actually see people being moved to like the other side of the world, being called to an international job. I think there are going to be some big kind of like, I got nothing to lose moments, servicing for people. If you've been contemplating these kinds of big moves or shifts, now would be a really good time to actually start to look at the more logistical side of things. I actually really love the relationship with the mind right now. You can be on quite a high with lots of new ideas that are kind of landing in. Great time to take notes, because some of this can be fleeting. So get things down on paper. I sort of sense for some of you, you want some tools and skills in different areas where you know there's been like a bit of a missing link. So a great time to start different courses, again, to kind of learn the practical or logical side to some things that feel a little bit more intuitive for you. I feel like it's like an American, the spirit coming in. Anyway, interesting. I will have a look at that if it feels necessary, but please put that out of the way for the moment. Step out. Thanks. So information is actually a really beautiful thing. It can be very stimulating right now if you're in a place where you're like, cool, I've created time and space and energy. I want to start to work on some things creatively. It's an awesome energy for this. If there's a lot of grief, pour it into your poetry. If there is a kind of a dry spell with your creation element, look at other people's work and feel the inspiration. I sort of sense that whilst we're not necessarily relating really, or we are relating to what's going on externally, we can look at it through the lens of like, let this inspire me. I kind of felt that like pain last week when tuning in. I was like, this is what's got to light my fire. Like, this is what has to fuel my devotion to humanity, to want to help awaken people to see the truth, to let you recognize that you are empowered and that you don't have to be stuck, that there are so many tools and resources internally to move through anything, and that it's not punishment. It's this detachment from what is, but also a healthy enough relationship with the heart and your internal world that you prioritize it over anything. And this is your health, this is your well-being, this is also your creative expression in life. And I sort of sense if we can feed the mind the right resources right now, it can trickle in, through these top sort of chakras and into your body, and you might find yourself expressing parts of you that might have just felt like rigid and stiff before. It's kind of like, I don't really care anymore. And I actually like this. You do care. It's just that you're not going to get caught up in the chitter chatter of the ego mind that prevents you from expressing your the depths of who you are. And some of that is your expression of what you want, what you need, without the fear of what that means if you express that to the person you love or the people you love or your workspace or whatever it is that's going on in your community or your intimate relationships, without the fear of what that means or trying to control the outcome of having that honest conversation. Trust the flow of honesty and authenticity right now. It's everything. I also want to point out how beautiful it is that you have the resources and the tools to go within. And sometimes that can be like, oh, where do I even start? Just start with meditation, start with relaxation, start with slowing down your body internally and setting that intention to connect to your heart or your intuition and start to see what happens, what occurs internally. If you want more support with that, come and find me. We can do one-on-one sessions, or you can join my magic school and we go into this so as that you become your own best teacher. There are so many different places in where you can learn. So if it's not me, go find that somewhere else. If you're really struggling to do this individually, it is a priority. But what I also want you to understand is, as a sensitive being, and all these different feelings and sensations that you're having right now, they carry you into a higher vibrational existence, but it also comes with a sense of responsibility. There is also beauty in recognizing that there is always a way through. And that was part of the pain that I saw, was this feeling of those whom are less aware right now are experiencing, I'm going to say, I feel like the mental health area of humanity is going to be really stretched right now. I sort of feel like people's relationships with drugs and alcohol, if there are sort of really addictive patterns that have been quite unmanageable, that sort of stuff can start to get really loud, because it can be very, very busy and very hard to manage with this energy, to try and, if we don't know how to move it, to shift it, to let it go, to feel it, to observe it, to detach from it in some way. It would be very hard right now. And so please just be kind to people. It can feel like we get frustrated easy when this energy is really on the surface, and it can feel irritable and all the rest of it. Do your best to come into your heart and into alignment every day, and be so kind to everybody that passes you by, because we never really know what's going on the inside in someone's life. And I sort of feel this is the moment where a lot of people feel like they don't have the tools and the resources. And so if you're in a position where you have this beautiful ability to share your gift internally, go there. Drop into that deeper aspect of what it is that you have to share, because you don't need to be afraid of how that is perceived. I sense that lots of you are wandering around with buckets full of keys and resources and tools that you can share, not only with your family and your friends and your community, but share more of your wisdom and what's been going on inside, whether it's through words or art or subtle and gentle, leaving a pot of honey for a neighbor or something at the moment could be enough to kind of bring them back to life. I sort of do sense that, I'm not going to get emotional, but there's a lot of people that are kind of considering not wanting to be here right now. And so, for those of you who have experienced those deep, dark depths, the most simplest exchange between another human being, whether that's a smile or just this connection, being present with those around you, it's enough to get this moving again, and let this be the forefront of our experience and our existence. All of this energy takes us to a place where we are looking for, I want to say, to jump on the back of the horse and feel freedom of your own direction, of your soul, what it is that you've come here to be, this co-creation with the universe. And I sense that what is, it is so unlike how we thought it was going to be. It's so how comfortable, as you jump on the back of the horse and ride into your reality, how present do you need to be in order to enjoy the experience as it unfolds before your eyes? It is so much less to do with what's going on out there, and so much more right now to do with how much depth is available in what might have previously felt like such a simple experience, that there is this big space that opens up where all of this shit was before, where there is depth for feeling, for creating, for for giving, and for learning, for self-realization, for self-actualization, for contribution. They're big energies. They're big golden energies that are a lot to hold, hence why you're doing the work to create space. And if you're in a position where you don't feel like you've been able to follow your soul's calling or your purpose work, you either acknowledge that you're not doing that in this life and stop kind of beating yourself up because you feel like you're wandering around in circles, or you let go of what you need to let go of and move in the direction of your heart. And it does feel a little cutthroat like that. So check in with your horse, how do you feel when you're on the back in your imagination, right? Like, what's the environment that you're going through? Do you feel distracted? Are you thinking about stuff still from the past? Are you thinking about how your life should have been, would have been, could have been if X, Y, Z? It's okay to feel sorry for yourself at times and to feel that experience, especially if it's been really hard. It's actually okay to stop and sympathize and to empathize for yourself and your heart and your journey, because a lot of you do go through things very privately that are very tough. It doesn't need to make us hard. It's about how do you hold yourself in that moment and still embrace life for what it is. It's a gift. And I just feel like the ripple effect that your spirit and your beautiful gift and your beautiful sensitivity and your life experience can offer to the world in this moment, even if it's that subtle interaction as you're walking up the beach, this is everything. This is the ripple effect. And I want you to notice where those ripple effects of other people are affecting your life positively. How many times can you say thank you in a day? How many times can you shift your focus to the beauty of the moment? How many times a day when you feel yourself distracted thinking about, oh, but it's not here yet, and I asked for this and it hasn't arrived, and blah, blah, blah. It's where can you soften and trust that the timing is perfect? How can you use self-reflection or reflection of your own life to look back and go, oh, all those moments 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they were hard, they were challenging. I remember thinking X, Y, Z, but it all worked out in the end. Okay, gone a little bit over time. I do like to try and kind of keep these short and sweet at the moment, but there's been some big energies. Right, let's deflect those thieves. Thank you. I want to kind of end on picking this up a note, because I used the word reward yesterday when I was talking about something. And it kind of came back and bit me on the ass afterwards. I was like, I don't like that word in context to what it is that we're talking about. But I feel like there's something to break apart here before we finish up. Why are you bringing that to my awareness? Okay, so it's almost like taking the actions without the expectation of reward, but still learning how to stay open to receive, still staying open to receive like the beauty of the moment or the challenge of the moment, without this feeling of, well, what do I get out of this? I know this sounds like a really interesting experience, but we get to look at the intention behind our action with precision right now. The kind of ugly parts, perhaps, of your own inner being. That becomes something quite beautiful, because often it comes from a place of lack of self-worth or a lack. It might not just be worth, it can be confidence, it can be not feeling enough. I sort of sense there are these kind of aspects of the self that feel just a bit like I kind of want to hide, like I'm shy and I can't do it, and what if I get it wrong, and it's what if it's not enough? I kind of sense that there are these sorts of pieces. So how genuine can you be in that, like your generosity to life, to other, to yourself, without the expectation of receiving anything back at all, other than you just responded and acted in love, and that's just it, and let the ripple effect be something that you might even not even get to see. I do kind of feel this, I kind of want to like bring this in. There's something finer here that I'm not really understanding. Channel that in, please. Okay, it's like this feeling of like, what are you expecting? That's kind of what I want to ask. I think that's a beautiful question for reflection or self-contemplation. What are you expecting? And how do you expect that to come to be if you are trying to control everything in your reality? How do you feel about it when you just let go and let love? How do you feel about it when you spend that time to go inwardly into your environment and bring love and light and conscious awareness and care to your everyday decisions, your actions, and how light it starts to feel when you're not taking action with the expectation of receiving anything back at all. Because what that allows is for the light to come through and kind of bring what is best for you. And the trusting of that, whilst that could come through in like more challenging lessons for people right now, like almost like, I sort of sense like people working at projects for like 6 years and kind of getting to this point where they were just like really wanted to like launch this experience, and you know, it was going to give them financial freedom and they can retire, and sort of getting to this point where it's sort of like, I'm not really sure if this is going to happen in the way that I first anticipated it to be. And that journey of going inward is almost like looking at the lessons of what that taught you, and how courageous you know you are, and how determined and how passionate you are about particular pieces. But what you're acknowledging is that you're actually desiring freedom more than you are financial abundance per se, or more that you are what happens with the project once it's released. It's sort of, I'm sort of starting to get complicated here because it's a thread that's kind of challenging to interpret. This kind of feels like in relationships too. It's sort of like you can be at a point in your relationship where you're like, right, this is like the perfect experience, but for some reason I'm feeling unfulfilled, and perhaps you've had the courage to like look inwardly and be like, am I unfulfilled? Is this me? Is it a personal thing, or is this showing up because it's literally in our relationship dynamic? So these are those moments where our expectation of what things look like by taking really brave action, by perhaps going and collecting data from a different direction, like taking time for yourself or letting the project go and going and doing something else for the pure joy of entertaining like a good feeling of contributing to your community, or volunteering somewhere and accepting your pension is more important, more fulfilling for you than it is to stick to what you thought it should have been, like glue. And so the more we can kind of shake and let go right now, the better. Deflecting what is connected to less than love expectations or connections or attachments in your life, and trusting that what ends up manifesting or coming to you as life sort of unfolds is for your highest good and for the highest good of all. And that there is always lessons to learn in all of it. And when a lesson is finished and completed, let it go. But it doesn't matter how challenging things can be internally. We don't need to do this alone. Your family, your friends, your neighbors, it's all important. It might seem like small stuff, but it's not. It's what ends up making up your life. It's those rituals. So if you're missing the people that you love because you're living on the other side of the world, like maybe it's time to go home. Yeah, some of these harder lessons feel done, and sometimes that just takes a conscious acknowledgement of a chapter ending in order for you to give yourself permission to do things a little differently. And so on a higher note, if you can tap into your creative energy right now and give this an outlet after going within, I feel like you can create some of the most incredible pieces of your life, whatever that creative expression is for you. That can be as simple as coming up with new food at home, or I don't know, ripping your clothes apart and sticking them back together and wearing them in a different way. Beautiful time to kind of get on board with the reinvention of this new expression internally. So it'll be a busy time if you're a hairdresser, beauty therapist, retail industry, those sorts of things that help complement the outer expression of the body. I do find that there is beauty in that. There can be an emphasis on beauty right now that can be right in your home. It's actually a really healing energy to be a part of right now. If you're not feeling it in your life, it's a nice time to explore some of that. That can be right down to like skin products and different facials, or I don't know, just stuff that makes you feel good. Beauty is a really wonderful thing, and it's inner beauty and it's also outer beauty, and it feels like it softens some of the harshness that we have been experiencing collectively, and it adds like a gentle touch to life. I sort of sense that, I don't know, it's the little things, it's the little things, it's the little things. And we've simplified life. We have simplified life. And now there's an element of excitement that wants to come through to pick things up a little bit so that you can start to experience the new. I'm going to leave it there. I may be back in a week or so to have a look at April. I do prefer to get these videos out to you a little bit earlier. It's strange to kind of, you know, mold it into a month. It sort of feels more like chapters of energy to me. I think we've got eclipsey sort of season coming up, so I'll just listen to the prompts when it comes to my guides as to when I bring the next video up. I'll always categorize them in the month, but whenever you find these videos, let that be the right timing for you. If you aren't already over on my Instagram, come over there and find me. We're doing some conversations around spirit guides this week, and I am beginning the enrollments to the House of Mystics 2.0, which is an online school for the intuitively sensitive to work on developing your spiritual gifts, to have those tools for clearing, self-healing, to work consciously on your inner reality. And so part of that is healing, part of that is growth, part of that is evolution, part of that is acknowledging these beautiful gifts and your ability to translate the universe of the language of the universe very intuitively, and to strengthen your weaknesses, and to also kind of focus on your strengths when it comes to vision, feeling, sensation, knowing, channeling, whatever that is for you. I don't believe that our spiritual gifts or our sensitivity to energy should be a burden. I do believe that these are a part of us. It's the natural part of you. And so through this journey of over 4 months online, we meet once or twice a week, and there are different classes, and yeah, all to support you on your spiritual path and help to awaken you to who you are and what it is that you came here to do. And ultimately our intuition is the thing that guides us to our purpose work, and through our purpose work, including connections, relationships, our communities, all of it. So it helps you move through, versus kind of sinking or feeling like you have to turn your eye away from the truth of life and who you are. So if you're looking for more depth, these tools and these resources, because you've had a little bit of an information gap or a knowledge gap there, then this might be for you. Thanks again. We're a little bit longer today. I do like to try and keep these in the space of half an hour, but it was quite a big transmission to bring through. Perhaps stuff that you've heard before, but nice to hear it too. You're not alone in this experience. I'm here if you need one-on-one readings or sessions to be guided to go inwardly. And until next time, take care.